I was driving by my stepdaughter's house. Then I decided to visit her. But when I saw my wife's car from afar, I decided to just peep inside. What I heard shocked me. I will tell you everything. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Josh Crane from New York. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I used to tell people I built my life like a house, brick by brick, sweat in the mortar, dreams in every layer. It wasn't just a metaphor. I literally built my first home with my own 2 hands, pouring concrete after work, hammering boards on weekends, and borrowing tools I couldn't afford. By the time I turned 55, I had rental properties in 3 counties, a small construction firm with my name on the side of every truck, and enough in the bank to make most men comfortable. But I wasn't just a builder in business. I was a builder in family. After my first wife died, I thought I'd never open up again. Losing her nearly broke me. Then I met Clara. She was sweet, elegant, and came with a 22-year-old daughter named Jess. Clara was 10 years younger than me and full of life. My son, Marcus, was hesitant about her at first, maybe even a little cold, but I chalked that up to grief. We were all trying to find a new rhythm. It wasn't perfect, but we managed. Or so I believed. Clara moved in after we married, and within a year, I put both her and Jess on my health plan. I covered Jess's final year of college when her financial aid ran out, gave her a used Corolla when she landed her first job, and paid the deposit for her condo when she said she wanted independence. Marcus wasn't thrilled. "Dad, are you sure you're not being used?" he asked once, his voice tight with something like fear, maybe resentment. "It's not about being used," I told him. "It's about building something new." He just nodded and walked off, the same way he used to when he was little and didn't agree with me, but didn't have the words to argue. I thought he'd come around with time. I believed that if I kept showing up for everyone, the family would follow. So that day, when I was driving past Jess's house on the way back from a rental property inspection, it wasn't strange for me to consider stopping by. I hadn't seen her in a couple of weeks, and I had a new key to the back gate I needed to drop off. Something about her dog and a faulty latch. But when I turned onto her street and spotted Clara's Lexus parked out front, something in my gut shifted. It wasn't just that she was there without mentioning it. It was the way the car was angled, like she'd rushed into the driveway, and the fact that both their cars were parked so tightly, the mailbox was blocked. I don't know what made me park a few houses down and walk up on foot instead of pulling into the driveway like usual. Maybe it was the quiet. Maybe it was instinct. I took the side path between the fence and the hedge, heading toward the back gate. It was partly ajar, the latch still unfixed. I peeked around, meaning to just say hello, but I stopped when I heard Clara's voice, sharp and low. "He's getting older. He won't see it coming," she said. My breath caught in my chest. I edged closer, keeping to the shadows. Jess responded, her voice clipped. "But what if Marcus contests the will? He's the biological son." There was a pause. "Clara again. That's why we need to start planting doubts now. About his behavior. His reliability. Make your stepfather believe Marcus isn't fit to handle any of it." My blood ran cold. The air was thick with heat, but I felt chilled to my bones. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I pulled out my phone and hit record. I stood there for 10 more minutes, unmoving, while they laid out their plan like it was a casual lunch menu. They spoke of my properties, the beach rental, the downtown duplex, even my office. They were talking about my legacy like it was up for grabs, like I wasn't still alive and kicking. Jess laughed at one point and said, "Once Marcus is out of the picture, we'll have it all locked down." Clara replied, "He never liked me anyway. This way, he won't have a reason to." That was when I realized it wasn't just a moment of scheming, it was a plan in motion. And worse, it came from the very people I'd trusted enough to welcome into the life I'd built with blistered hands and sleepless nights. I backed away slowly, careful not to make a sound. My heart was pounding, my ears ringing with each step I took. When I reached my truck, I sat inside for a long moment, phone clutched in one hand, the other shaking on the steering wheel. I stared at the house. That place I'd helped fund, renovate, decorate. The place where I'd laughed over wine and watched football in the living room now felt like the site of a crime. And in a way it was. The crime wasn't theft. Not yet. It was betrayal. Cold, calculating betrayal. And it was enough to shift the ground beneath everything I thought was solid. I didn't confront them. Not then. I drove straight to my lawyer's office and asked for an emergency meeting. When he played the recording back, his eyes widened. "You have them," he said. "Dead to rights." I nodded slowly. "Change everything," I told him. "Take them out of the will. Lock the assets down. Transfer control to Marcus. And draw up divorce papers." He looked at me for a long beat. "Are you sure?" I didn't blink. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the light from the hallway casting a pale glow through the cracked door. Clara hadn't come home yet when I got in, and when she finally did. Sometime around midnight, she moved quietly, tiptoeing like a thief. I pretended to be asleep, listening to the soft rustle of her clothes being tossed into the hamper, the muted click of her phone screen lighting up. I used to love those little moments, the quiet routines that made a house feel like home. But that night, every sound was a blade, every movement a reminder that the woman beside me had been planning my ruin with a smile on her face. I lay there motionless, breathing slowly, wondering how long this plan of theirs had been simmering beneath my roof. Was it weeks? Months? Had I missed signs that were right in front of me? The next morning, I left early. Clara offered a sleepy, "Drive safe, honey," from the top of the stairs, and it nearly made me laugh. It was all I could do not to turn around and confront her right then. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. What I needed was clarity, proof. Something that went beyond a single recorded conversation. I needed to know what I was up against. So instead of heading to work, I circled back, parked 2 blocks from Jess's house. Again, I waited. An hour passed. Then 2. Eventually, Clara's car pulled into the driveway just like the day before. She went inside without knocking. I stayed in my truck, watching the curtains shift like someone had peeked out. 10 minutes later, I was back at the side of the house. Phone in hand, ears straining for every word. "You think he suspects anything?" Jess asked, her voice clearer this time. They were in the dining room, maybe just a few feet from the window. "No," Clara replied, her tone flat. "He's been acting normal. If anything, he's been distant lately. Maybe it's work stress. Or Marcus again." Jess snorted. "Marcus? God, he's such a smug little shit. Always acting like he's the only one who's earned anything." "He didn't earn anything," Clara said. "He just showed up and got handed the world." I felt something crack in my chest. These women, my wife, my stepdaughter, had reduced my son to an obstacle, a nuisance. They didn't see the nights I stayed up helping him study for geometry, the afternoons we spent building tree houses, the time I held him through his first real heartbreak. They didn't know how many times I doubted myself as a father, wondering if I was doing enough. They only saw the inheritance, the trust fund, the empire. "I talked to that lawyer friend of mine," Jess continued. "If you die married to him, and there's no will or prenup adjustment, you get half. More if Marcus can be painted as irresponsible or estranged." Clara's voice dropped to a whisper. "That's why we need to document everything. Missed birthdays, canceled plans, arguments. Spin it like he's pulling away from the family. Create a paper trail." I nearly dropped my phone. My hands were shaking so hard I had to press my back against the wall to steady myself. My wife, was plotting to assassinate my son's character. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about erasing him, smearing him, turning my legacy into her leverage. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay quiet. This wasn't the time for confrontation. Not yet. The rage boiling inside me needed to be focused, not flailing. I had to be surgical. They kept talking. About tactics, about timing, even about Marcus's girlfriend. "If we can get her to say he's emotionally volatile, even once, that could help," Jess said. I stopped listening. I'd heard enough. I turned and walked away, my breath coming in shallow gulps. My phone was still recording, but I didn't care. I just needed air. I needed space to think. Back in the truck, I stared at the dashboard while the audio played back in my ear. Every word was a nail in the coffin of our so-called family. The betrayal ran deeper than I'd imagined. Clara hadn't just joined Jess's scheme. She was the architect. She spoke like someone who had been waiting, patiently, strategically, for her moment. And I, in all my pride and optimism, had handed her the blueprint to my life and invited her to remodel it. At the law office, my attorney didn't hide his disbelief. "This is layered," he muttered, rewinding the audio. "They're not just talking casually, they're building a case. This is a long game." He glanced at me. "You okay?" "No," I said honestly. "But I will be." We spent the next hour laying the groundwork. Marcus would receive full control of the business. Clara and Jess would be removed from every estate document. The house would be placed in a trust that couldn't be contested. And Clara, Clara, would be served with divorce papers once everything was legally airtight. "Don't tip your hand," my lawyer warned. "If they find out too early, they might act." That night, I came home to Clara cooking dinner. She greeted me with a kiss on the cheek and asked how my day was. I looked at her, the woman I had once watched dance barefoot in the kitchen, the woman I had buried my grief with, and I felt nothing. Not hate, not love, just distance. Like I was watching someone perform a role in a play I'd seen too many times. She passed me a plate and talked about her day, smiling through it all. But behind her eyes, I saw a calculation, and it chilled me. I excused myself early, claiming a headache. As I lay in the dark, I stared at the ceiling again. Only this time, I wasn't helpless. I had evidence. I had a plan. And for the first time in days, I had resolve. It's a strange thing, realizing your home has become enemy territory. Every drawer, every cabinet, every framed photo on the wall feels tainted when you know the people smiling back at you had knives behind their backs the entire time. I walked through the house like a guest those next few days, nodding when Clara spoke, listening when she asked about dinner plans, pretending to care when she brought up something Jess said or did. I was performing, too, in my own way. But under the surface, every interaction was calculated. I noted her routines, watched her phone habits, tracked what she touched, what she avoided. When she left her iPad open on the kitchen island one morning while she showered, I peeked at her messages. Not to snoop for the thrill of it, but to protect what was mine. And what I saw only confirmed the urgency of what I was doing. "Just be patient," Jess had texted her. "Once he updates the will again, you'll be set. Just act clueless." Clara had replied, "I'm playing the long game. Don't worry." That's what it was to them, just a game. And I was the old fool moving too slowly across the board. But they didn't know I'd flipped it over. By the end of that week, the first wave of changes was underway. My attorney had pulled all joint access from Clara. No more power of attorney, no more rights to my medical directives, no more shared decision-making in any legal sense. The bank accounts were separated. All my business holdings were moved into a protected LLC with Marcus listed as co-manager and trustee of the living estate. My will was officially amended. Clara and Jess were removed with language so airtight even the best estate attorney would have trouble punching through. I hadn't just shut the door. I had welded it shut, poured concrete in front of it, and walked away. Marcus didn't ask many questions when I called him to the office and laid everything out. He just sat there, quiet and stunned, flipping through the documents. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice low. I nodded. They weren't just talking. They had a plan. They were going to erase you, Marcus. Take everything. He looked down for a long time, then back up at me. "You believed me, finally." I could feel the weight of those words. I had doubted him in the past, defended Clara, justified Jess's entitlement. I had let my hope blind me. "I'm sorry," I said. "I let the wrong people get too close." He didn't say anything else. Just reached over, squeezed my shoulder, and nodded. That gesture said more than any words could have. The real storm started 2 days later. Clara must have tried to make an online transfer from one of our old joint accounts and realized it was frozen. She called me at work, her voice too calm. "Hey, did you move the account funds to a new card?" I couldn't access the Chase login this morning. I pretended to be distracted. "Oh, I'll have to check with the bank," I said. "Could be a security thing." She didn't push. But that evening, she was more inquisitive. Did something happen at the bank? And why can't I log into the property management portal anymore? I played dumb, brushing it off with, "We've been reviewing access due to some fraud concerns." She didn't buy it. I could see it in her eyes. By the next morning, she was storming around the kitchen, slamming drawers, muttering under her breath. She confronted me by the fridge. "Are you freezing me out of the accounts?" she snapped. "Why am I getting notices about revoked access?" I held her gaze and said evenly, "You should probably talk to your lawyer." Her face paled, then reddened. "My lawyer," she repeated. "What's going on, David?" I shrugged, taking a sip of coffee like it was any other Tuesday. "Just making sure everything is clean and protected. You understand, right?" That night, she didn't sleep in our bedroom. I didn't ask where she went. The next afternoon, the divorce petition was served. She wasn't home. I made sure of that. I had it delivered to her office, a neutral place with witnesses. My attorney said the fewer surprises in private, the better. Within hours, she was calling, texting, emailing. The tone shifted quickly, from confusion to panic to anger. "You're blowing this out of proportion," one message read. "Why are you doing this?" another pleaded. By the end of the night, she sent one final text. "We need to talk. Please." I didn't mean any of it. Didn't mean any of it. As if her voice hadn't been perfectly measured, her plan neatly sketched in bullet points. I didn't respond. The following day, she showed up at my office. My secretary came in first. Clara is in the lobby. She says it's urgent." I debated for a second, then nodded. "Send her in." Clara walked in looking nothing like the woman I married. The usual poise was gone. Her hair was tied up messily, her makeup barely touched. She looked desperate. "David," she said, breathless. "What is happening? Why are you doing this?" I didn't rise. I just looked at her. Really looked at her. "How long?" I asked. She blinked. "What? How long have you and Jess been planning to cut Marcus out?" Her mouth opened, then shut. "It wasn't like that," she started, stepping closer. "It was just talk." She was venting. "You misheard. I recorded it, Clara." That stopped her cold. She stood there, staring at me, the blood draining from her face. "I was at Jess's house that day. I heard every word. I recorded it. You were plotting to discredit my son. You weren't venting. You were planning." She sank into the chair opposite me, silent for a long moment. Then, finally, she whispered, "I didn't think you were listening." "No," I said, voice steady. "That was the problem. I was listening too late." You never really understand how much someone depended on your silence until you finally speak. After Clara left my office that day, I sat there in the quiet, staring at the chair she had occupied like it still held the ghost of her betrayal. I could still hear her voice echoing in my head. "I didn't think you were listening." No apology, no remorse, just the stunned realization that the man she thought she had cornered had seen the board, the pieces, the whole damn game. For days, she barely contacted me, as if not knowing how much I knew was more terrifying than the confrontation itself. But then came the public unraveling, where truth stops being a private ache and starts becoming a social spectacle. It started small. Jess tried to call me. I didn't answer. Then came the text, short and arrogant. "You're being manipulated by Marcus. Wake up." I read it, scoffed, and blocked her number. The same girl I'd helped through school, who once cried on my shoulder when her first job didn't pan out, was now accusing my only son of manipulation. The irony could have choked me. That weekend, I went to a birthday party for a longtime friend, Harold, a guy I'd worked construction with in my 20s. His daughter turned 21, and I showed up alone, wearing the same face I used when bidding on property, unreadable. But people noticed things. Clara had always come with me. Her absence wasn't subtle. "What happened?" Harold's wife whispered, cornering me by the grill. I smiled politely. "We're divorcing," I said. "Irreconcilable differences." She blinked. "Oh, I'm sorry. That's surprising." I nodded. "Not really. Just took me a while to see it." By the time dessert came out, the whispers had started. I didn't care. I wasn't hiding anymore. Let the rumors fly. Let people piece it together. If Clara wanted to weaponize my silence, I would use her exposure as my shield. The next real confrontation came 3 days later. Clara showed up at the house around 8 p.m. I was on the back porch, drinking coffee and watching the sprinklers tap against the hedges. The evening air was cool, unusually quiet. I knew she was coming. Her text had said, "Please, I just want to talk face to face. One last time." I should have said no, but some part of me needed to hear her excuses. To look her in the eyes and watch the mask fall completely. When she stepped onto the porch, she was dressed carefully. The same blouse she wore on our second anniversary, the one with soft pink flowers. I wondered if that was on purpose. She sat down across from me, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. "I don't know how to start," she finally said. "Try the truth," I answered. "Start there." She looked down at her hands. "I was scared," she said. "Jess is my daughter. I thought if we didn't secure something now, we'd be left with nothing." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "So the plan was to destroy my son?" "No," she said quickly. "We weren't going to destroy anyone. We just wanted a place. Security. After you're gone, Marcus would have everything." I interrupted. "He'd have everything because he's my son. Because I built this for him. Not for you. Not for Jess." Clara's face twisted into something between anger and grief. "We gave you a new life, David. A new family." I stood slowly, coffee mug still in hand. "No, I gave you a life. You married a man still grieving, still trying to hold onto some sense of warmth. I loved you, Clara. I defended you to Marcus. I paid for your daughter's future. And what did you do with that? You tried to gut it." She stood too, tears in her eyes now. "I made a mistake." I stepped forward, voice low. "You made a choice." There was a long silence between us. Finally, she whispered, "What happens now?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized how unfamiliar she'd become. "Now, you sign the divorce papers. You walk away with what you brought in. And you pray that's enough." The mask broke then. Her expression collapsed into something jagged and raw. "You're heartless," she said, voice trembling. "You'd leave me with nothing after everything we shared?" I didn't flinch. "You left me long before I left you. You just didn't expect me to notice." She left that night without another word. The front door slammed, and the house exhaled, like it had been waiting to breathe again. I walked through the halls after she left, touching the photos we had taken, vacations, holidays, weddings. I took them all down. Every single one. Not in anger, but in finality. There was no use preserving a fantasy. The next week was a blur of legal meetings and logistical cleanup. Marcus stayed close, watching me with cautious respect. One afternoon, I found him in the garage, sorting through old tools. "You keeping the DeWalt, or should I take it?" he asked. I smiled faintly. "You can take it. It's yours anyway." He looked up. "You sure you're okay, Dad?" I paused. "I'm not okay, but I'm getting there. One nail at a time." Chapter 5. What was ours is now mine. After Clara left for the last time, the silence in the house shifted. It wasn't the eerie kind that follows a fight, or the haunting quiet that fills a room after someone dies. No, this was different. This was the kind of silence that marked freedom. A wide, uncharted space where noise used to live. The weight of her presence, the sound of her footsteps in the hallway, the perfume that clung to the bathroom mirror, the clink of her wine glass after dinner. It all faded like the tail end of a bad song. But the absence didn't feel like a loss. It felt like clarity. Like I could finally see the outlines of my life without the fog of manipulation distorting the picture. And in that new clarity, I began the slow process of reclaiming what was mine. I started with the bedroom. That shared space had once been sacred to me. I stripped the sheets, threw out the mattress we'd bought together, even replaced the curtains she'd chosen during one of her design phases. It wasn't about bitterness, it was about exorcism. Every thread of fabric, every decorative pillow, every framed quote on the wall had been part of a performance. She had curated a space to look like a home, all while plotting to hollow it out behind my back. I stood in the middle of the room, now bare but clean, and breathed deeply for the first time in months. There was no more pretending here. Just wood floors and walls, and the scent of new beginnings. Marcus started coming around more often. At first, it was practical. Papers to sign, documents to review, contractors to coordinate for the business restructuring. But eventually, the work bled into coffee conversations and late-night talks on the porch. He asked questions I wasn't ready for at first. Why did you trust her so much? He said one night, watching the moon cast shadows across the backyard. I didn't answer right away. I sipped my coffee, staring into the dark. Because I didn't want to be alone, I said finally. Because I thought loving someone again meant trusting them completely. I didn't see the line between hope and blindness until I was already walking off the edge. He didn't press, just nodded. But I could tell that hearing me say it mattered to him. It mattered to me, too. Word got out slowly. Clara didn't tell her side loudly. She couldn't, not with a recording and court papers already moving through the system. But whispers made their way through family circles, through old friends who used to sit around our holiday table. I got a call from my sister, Judith, who lived out in Temecula. Is it true? She asked. About Clara and Jess? I didn't lie. Yes. I caught them planning to cut Marcus out. I recorded it. She was quiet for a moment. I always felt like she was too polished, Judith said. Like she smiled with her teeth, but not her eyes. I sighed. I thought that was just grace. Turns out, it was strategy. Judith didn't gloat. She just said, I'm glad you caught it before it was too late. One afternoon, while organizing boxes in the garage, I came across an old photo of Marcus and me from a fishing trip in '07. He was skinny and sunburnt, wearing a life vest 2 sizes too big and holding up a catfish with both hands like it was gold. I remembered that trip so vividly, how he'd begged me to stay an extra day, how I'd canceled a client meeting just to make him smile. I held that photo in my hand for a long time, feeling the regret settle in my bones. I had spent years trying to replace the warmth I lost after his mother died, and in doing so, I'd let that warmth be hijacked. I doubted him when he questioned Clara's intentions. I had chosen my second wife's comfort over my son's instincts. That truth stung more than anything else. But Marcus didn't hold it against me, not openly, anyway. We rebuilt slowly, without grand speeches or forced bonding. He started asking for my input on the business again. He'd swing by with takeout, and we'd eat in the den, watching old westerns and cracking sarcastic jokes like we used to before Clara moved in and turned every evening into a wine and cheese routine. One night, as we sat in comfortable silence, he said, I never wanted the money, Dad. I just didn't want to be replaced. That broke me. I swallowed hard and said, You weren't. You never were. I just forgot how to prove it. He nodded, not as a forgiveness, but as acknowledgement. That was enough. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail from Clara's attorney, her official request for a mediation meeting to discuss assets. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Even now, she was still clinging to the illusion that something could be negotiated, salvaged, reasoned. But there was no middle ground to stand on when trust had been burned to the ground. I didn't respond right away. I called my lawyer and told him to handle it. Whatever's legally required, give it. Nothing more. He didn't argue. Understood, he said. You've already done the hard part. In the evenings, when the house was quiet again and the sun dipped low behind the hills, I'd sit outside with a drink in hand and watch the shadows stretch across the lawn. I had expected this part, the aftermath, to feel lonely. But it didn't. It felt earned. It felt honest. I wasn't pretending anymore. I wasn't trying to force a family where betrayal had taken root. I was simply living in the house I had built, free from the people who had tried to claim it as theirs. Some mornings, I still woke up expecting to hear her in the kitchen, rinsing berries, humming, tapping her spoon against a mug like it was some domestic metronome. Old habits have a way of lingering long after the person's gone. But the house, even in its quietest moments, no longer felt haunted. The emptiness wasn't painful anymore, it was peaceful. After months of legal meetings, notarized documents, and late-night calls with my attorney, the divorce was finalized. Clara walked away with what the law allowed. Nothing more, nothing less. Jess never reached out again, and I never expected her to. Their silence was the only apology I ever received, and it suited me just fine. I didn't need them to explain. I had already heard the truth when they thought no one was listening. The day the court issued the final decree, I didn't celebrate. I didn't go out for drinks or call up friends to announce my freedom. I just took a long walk through the house, touching the walls, peeking into rooms I hadn't stepped into in weeks. I ended up in my old study, the one Clara always said was too dark, and tried to turn into a meditation room. I reopened it for what it was, a place to think, to plan, to remember. I sat down at the desk, pulled out a yellow legal pad, and started making a list, not of tasks or bills or chores, but of things I had let slide while pretending to be part of a family that didn't value me. Friendships I hadn't nurtured. Hobbies I had given up. Parts of myself I'd muted just to keep the peace. I filled the page quickly. It was sobering how long the list was. Marcus came by the next evening. He didn't ask about the finalization, didn't poke at the wound. Instead, he showed me something on his phone, a design mock-up for a new logo for the business. I figured we could start fresh, he said, tapping the screen. It was clean, bold, modern. I looked at it for a long time, then nodded. Let's do it. That exchange didn't need sentiment. The meaning was clear. We were building something again, this time on bedrock. No hidden schemes. No blood ties twisted into barbed wire. Just honesty. He stayed for dinner, and we ate burgers in the backyard, talking about everything but the past. But the past had a way of showing up when you least expected it. A week later, I ran into Clara's cousin at a hardware store. We hadn't spoken in years, but he recognized me instantly. Heard what happened, he said cautiously. Tough break. I gave a polite nod, kept browsing the drill bits. But then he added, Clara says you misunderstood. That it was just venting, not a plan. I set the package in my hand back on the shelf. If it was just venting, why were they documenting my son's mistakes? Why were they researching inheritance law? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Some people just want to smooth the edges of everything, even betrayal. I'd spent too many years doing that myself. Not anymore. That night, I stood on the porch again, staring out at the streetlight-lit road that had once welcomed Clara home. I thought about how easily I'd handed her the keys to everything. My house, my accounts, my heart. I didn't regret loving her. I regretted trusting her more than I trusted myself. I regretted not believing Marcus the first time he raised the alarm. I had tried to blend two families that were never meant to mix, forcing puzzle pieces together until the picture tore apart. And still, I wasn't bitter. Just clearer. One evening, Marcus brought his girlfriend by for dinner. She was kind, observant, the type who noticed small things, like how I'd swapped the art in the hallway or that I cooked with cast iron. After we ate, she helped clean up, then asked to see the garden Clara used to obsess over. I almost said no, but I nodded instead, led her to the back, and showed her what remained. Overgrown hedges, weeds peeking through the mulch, roses blooming stubbornly in the far corner. She must have loved it out here, she said quietly. I looked at the space and said, she loved how it looked, not what it meant. The girl nodded slowly, like she understood more than I expected. Later, Marcus said, she asked me if you're happy now. I told her you're more at peace. But I didn't know if that's the same thing. I smiled at that. It's not. But peace is a damn good start. I don't know what Clara tells people now. Maybe she paints herself as misunderstood, abandoned, the wife of a man who closed himself off. Let her. That story might make her sleep better. I've learned that truth doesn't need to be shouted. It just needs to be lived. And I'm living mine, quietly, deliberately, without compromise. The business is stable. My will is final. Marcus is beside me, not behind me. My legacy will go to the one person who never asked for it, but always deserved it. Some nights I still sit on the porch with coffee in hand, watching the sky change colors as the sun dips behind the rooftops. I don't feel sad. I feel anchored. I feel like I've returned to myself after years of being someone else's second choice. I may have lost a marriage, but I gained a boundary. I may have walked away from a woman I once loved, but I stepped back into a version of my life that's real, unfiltered, and mine. If you've ever had to cut off someone you once called family just to protect your peace, you're not alone. I didn't choose betrayal, but I did choose how to respond to it. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to walk away to preserve your legacy? Your story matters too. And if this story hit home for you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more real stories about family, boundaries, and self-preservation.